Okay, I have a great show for you today. I have a fellow journalist to help me go through some of the biggest stories in the news. Steve Baker, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Stephen. It's good to be here.
So, just some background. Steve Baker does journalism with The Blaze over with Glenn Beck's group. They've been covering some of the biggest stories in America. They go much, much deeper than I go. I tend to stay a little bit surface level and follow just the daily news. You guys go deep. At the same time, you've had your life turned upside down by being at in Washington D.C. on January 6th, and the FBI and the Biden DOJ deciding that they're going to try to ruin your life. So we're gonna get into some of that. But the first thing I wanted to hear was your thoughts on the Supreme Court's new ruling in favor of those who have been politically hunted and abused for their involvement in January 6th, whether they made it to the inner chambers of Congress or just happened to be in Washington, D.C. Tell me your thoughts on that. And then I want to go through your personal journey with the January 6th situation.
Yeah, I was actually at the Supreme Court in April when they heard arguments on this, what everybody's referring to as the obstruction of an official proceeding charge. It's a felony with up to 20-year prison sentence attached. It is from the Code of Federal Regulations. It's the 1512C2 is the other way people are referring to it. I just say 1512. But that particular hearing that I sat in on, I was rather convinced after that was over that the Supreme Court was going to vacate this thing, that they were going to strike this down, that they were going to, put another way, bitch slap the DOJ for applying this. And they did. I actually thought it would be a 7-2 ruling. I never dreamed that Amy Barrett would would join with the with Sotomayor and Kagan on that. But surprisingly, Ketanji Brown Jackson joined with the conservative majority. And I actually predicted that as well, because she actually telegraphed a skepticism about its use in her questions during the arguments. And so obviously I was very curious about it. Now, it does not affect me personally, despite my own legal jeopardy related to January 6th. I was not charged with 1512 obstruction charge. And as I look at it now, in the days since the ruling on Friday, and seeing what the reaction is, both from the Department of Justice and from all the legal eagles and all of the commentators, I'm a little perplexed and a little bit disappointed, but not surprised at the Department of Justice reaction to this. Basically, what they're doing is they're planning on flipping the middle finger to the Supreme Court and just proceeding forward, not only with some of these charges. There's 355 people that were charged with 1512. Some of them pled guilty to that in a plea deal, and that was their only punishment. So there were actual individuals who have served prison time, already finished their prison time, but they may be still under probation. They may still be under home detention as a result of that. And so obviously the legal teams are working on getting those sentences vacated, if possible, to get full release from these individuals. There were other individuals that it was just part of a series of other crimes that they committed, including other felonies. And what the Department of Justice has projected is that what they'll do is, rather than reducing their sentence to that portion of whatever their sentence was, whether they got 2 years or 8 years or 12, whatever, reducing the portion of it that would have been allocated or calculated into their overall sentence based on the 1512 felony crime, that they're indicating, well, we'll just adjust all of them, and we'll adjust some of the other ones up and we'll give them the same sentence. They've actually said that. The U.S.
Wow.
attorney over D.C., Matthew Graves, has actually said those very words. And then, in addition to that, there's an avalanche of filings, and they have begun of all types of these individuals, whether they're in prison, whether they've still haven't gone to trial yet, whether they're waiting for sentencing. There were actually early on when the Supreme Court decided to take this up, there were some judges that actually released some prisoners. There were judges that halted and continued their trials for a later date, or they continued their sentencing to a much later date. So there's a lot of confusion out there, and of course, every judge is different. Every case is different. Every judge has the latitude, the autonomy to do whatever he or she wants to do. There is no rhyme or reason. There is no standard by how each judge is going to handle these cases, even when it's an apples to apples comparison on an individual defendant. Two different judges may handle this in two completely different ways, and they have the right to do so. So there's going to be a lot of wait and see going on as these motions are now beginning to fly.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So if you weren't part of the 1512 situation, I've had Tariq Johnson, police lieutenant, on giving his perspective. I've had Brandon Straka on, several others. What was your particular situation on January 6th?
Well, I was there covering the event. I mean, there's just
as a journalist, or as just
as a journalist. To begin with, I've never been a Trump supporter, although I am now. For the first time in my life, I'm a single issue voter. I'm voting for the guy who says he's going to pardon all the J6 nonviolent defendants. So this is a very, very easy election cycle for me. I don't have to worry about it, think about it, make calculations, or look at the polls, or listen to the debates, although I did the other night, of course. But for me, it took them over 3 years before they finally moved against me. Now, they were investigating me for a very long time. They were investigating me for over 3 years. And then they decided that they were going to first charge me in November of 21. So roughly 10 months after the event. We did a media blitz then, and we backed them down. I'm not going to say we scared them off, but we made them retrench and rethink whether this was a PR battle they wanted by arresting a higher profile, media figure. And I wasn't a media figure by any means. At that time, I wasn't with the Blaze. I was independent. I was doing my I had my blog, and I was doing podcasts, that sort of thing. But I was well known, and I did tons of interviews, tons of shows. And that was somewhat successful because we didn't hear from them again for 20 months. This was after they told me in November of 21 that I would be charged within the week. That's what the DOJ told my attorney. Fast forward 20 months, it's August of last year, of 2023, and I get a grand jury subpoena for my work, for my videos that I took and captured on January 6th. We responded to that. That was a little troublesome because you have to understand that grand juries are not seated to investigate misdemeanor defendants. They are looking at somebody for a felony when a grand jury is looking at you. So obviously that had my gut pretty tight. We didn't hear from them again until mid-December, at which time they said, okay, you're going to have to turn yourself in the week before Christmas to the FBI. They were going to allow me to self-present. But by then I'm working for the Blaze. The Blaze went into high gear. We backed them off again. They retrenched. Within 24 hours, they called back and said, we're not going to do this till after Christmas. So another couple of months passed by. And then the last week of February, we got the call, my attorney did, and they told me that I would have to turn myself in within the week to the FBI. I happened to be working out of Dallas at the time. I live in North Carolina, but I was in Dallas at the Blaze mothership and working out of that area at that time. So we decided to go ahead and present there, and two of my attorneys live in the area anyway, so it was kind of easy for that to happen there. So I self-presented on March 1st at 7 o'clock in the morning to the FBI field office. They told my attorney that I needed to arrive wearing, and I quote, shorts, a t-shirt, and flip-flops. Well, Stephen, there's only one reason why they want you to present in shorts, flip-flops, and a t-shirt, and that's because they're going to transfer you to an orange jumpsuit and put leg chains on you. So I did not comply. I arrived in a suit and tie, and when we got to the field office, my attorneys went up to the FBI agents that greeted us at the gate and negotiated that I did not have to change into an orange jumpsuit. I had to take off my shoelaces, my belt, my tie, and my jacket. So I was able to wear my dress shirt and my dress slacks. And then handed all of those items over to one of my attorneys. And then the FBI processed me there. They handcuffed me, walked me out to their car, where they transferred me then to the federal courthouse in downtown Dallas, handed me over to the U.S. Marshals, who then put me in leg chains and a belt chain with my wrist tied to my stomach, or chained to my stomach rather, and then put me in a cage with a meth dealer. And then they marched me in those leg chains before the federal magistrate there in Dallas to hear my charges against me.
Wow. Holy cow.
And Stephen, those were nonviolent misdemeanor charges, by the way.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Okay. So let's go back to January 6th. Were you like beating in the windows with an American flag? I mean, why go to such great lengths? I mean, they're treating you like you're Hannibal Lecter or something. What is it? What is it that they're accusing you of?
Well, the four misdemeanors are what everybody refers to as the four basic misdemeanors. There's the glorified trespassing charge, which is entering and remaining in a restricted space. There's the picketing and parading charge, and then they're hitting me with a couple of abusive language charges. Although I never used any abusive language of any type, of any kind, at any time inside the Capitol or on the Capitol grounds. They are accusing me of using some sort of abusive language, because when the guns came out within 5 minutes after Ashley Babbitt was shot, I happened to be in a hallway right across from a big staircase near the House chamber. And then the entire time I'm at the Capitol, the entire time, outside and inside, we never see weapons drawn. Nobody's drawing their handguns. There's no long rifle. There, up on the Capitol roof and on the upper terrace, there's officers up there that are part of what they call their M4 units, who are carrying long rifles, but there's no threat at all. You don't sense any threat from people with guns. Then all of a sudden, in a flash of time, all of a sudden, every officer had their weapons drawn. The radios were going off. You could hear on their radios about messages about shots fired, calling for triage. There was panic. There was chaos on the Capitol Police radios at the time. All of a sudden, tactical units start running and arriving up the stairs. We see the ATF tactical units. And I asked the cops there, I said, "Are you planning on using those weapons on us?" That was it. That's the only thing I said in the Capitol all day. Are you planning on using these weapons on us? And so, this is what they do. I wasn't picketing or parading either. I wasn't wearing any political attire. I wasn't wearing a MAGA hat. I had nothing political whatsoever. Had no flag, had no banner, had no placards. I had a camera, a tripod, and a microphone. And that's what I carried into the Capitol with me. And so I was in the Capitol for 37 minutes, and we have already, through the blaze, we've produced a video of my entire time in the Capitol, because I am one of those journalists who have had access to the Capitol CCTV. So we put together a montage of my own video overlaid with Capitol CCTV video, and showed exactly my behavior the entire time I was in the Capitol. I was always up and away from the crowd. I was always filming what was going on. I was not high-fiving anybody. I never engaged in any chanting, any singing of the national anthem, nothing of the type ever. You can see me stop at times and lean up against the wall and start taking notes. And I was recording what was going on in the building. And so both keeping mental notes as well as video footage. And so after I left, I did a couple of interviews on a couple of media interviews, and then I I did a podcast with a colleague, actually from our hotel room later that evening, in which I recounted some of what I saw, and they're using some of that language I used in the podcast from my hotel room in Virginia, by the way, not on Capitol grounds, not even in D.C., but we were joking about something that we saw on television. We saw on the news as we're sitting there with a couple of adult beverages in our hand and kind of, giving a post-mortem on what we'd seen that day. And I had been in Nancy Pelosi's office hallway, and I had seen where they had turned over some tables and chairs and rifled and they had done some damage. Well, the second I saw the damage, I got the hell out of there. I turned around. That's all on my camera, by the way. It's irrefutable. As soon as I saw the damage, I was like, whoop, I turned 180 degrees and exited out of there. And so we were seeing on the news that allegedly somebody had stolen Pelosi's laptop. So I made, again, with an adult beverage in my hand, joking about it, I said, oh man, my biggest regret of the day is I didn't steal Nancy Pelosi's laptop. Can you imagine what I would have? Now, I'm an investigative journalist. Can you imagine what I would have found out about the government if I'd have stolen that laptop? Yuck, 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 laugh, laugh, laugh.
Yeah.
That's in my statement of facts from the FBI. They are basically saying that that this shows the intent. This was my mindset of my trip through the Capitol, that I wasn't there as a journalist. I was there as an activist, even though I'm joking about what I'm seeing on television at the time. So basically, there's no other way to say it. Over 60 other journalists who submitted their work, their stories, their videos to mainstream or left-leaning news services have not been charged, not been arrested, won't be. But the small handful of us who submit our stories from a right-leaning perspective have been.
Wow. Wow. Okay. Yeah, because I saw there were other journalists there, and I'm like, they're not being harassed. They're not, going to jail. They're not having their lives threatened. I guess it all comes down to who you hand your video footage over to, right? Who they perceive that you might be voting for,
right.
Or your ideology when it comes to politics. Oh my gosh, I am so sorry that you're still dealing with it. It's not like this is in the past.
No, this is ongoing. We've gone through about 3 months of hearings now, and what they call status hearings. I've of course been arraigned. I've had to meet before a magistrate twice. We're doing Zoom hearings right now with my judge. I've been assigned the judge. We've had to already file some motions because of some what I consider to be absolute malfeasance from what are called the pretrial services officers. Twice now, a DC pretrial service officer has lied to the judge about my behavior because I'm under pretrial certain pretrial restrictions, and the pretrial service officer in DC reported to the judge early on that I was in violation of my pretrial restrictions, which I wasn't. I was 100% in compliance. My North Carolina PSO confirmed that I wasn't, but I had to stand before the judge, basically, when I say stand on a Zoom hearing, and get a tongue lashing from him, even though I was in 100% compliance. And then the DC PSO also lied again, and because we've made a motion for me to get my right to carry my weapon because I've had threats against me, rather high profile since that arrest. And so I've had direct threats, direct and provable threats. And so as a result of that, we're trying to get my right to carry returned to me. And many J6 defendants were successfully able to do so. Many J6 defendants were not even required to hand over their weapons. I was, and so we're trying to get that back. But in the process of one of those motions that we're working on to legally argue for my right to protect myself, the PSO in DC lied to the judge and told him that I had threatened a high-ranking legislator during the riot. Now, that's the quote. What she's actually referring to is when I called Nancy Pelosi a bitch in a Virginia hotel room.
Wow.
Calling somebody a bitch is not a threat, and it was certainly not during the riot.
Yeah.
That's what she lied to the judge. So the judge denied that motion as a result of her lie. So we are now appealing that to the D.C. Circuit Court.
Do you think that they care at all about your evidence, or is this just about nailing you because it's related to January 6th?
It's well, I can tell you they don't care about the evidence. That goes without saying. If they cared about the evidence, it would not be a 99.75 conviction rate for January 6th defendants right now, because that's exactly that's what the numbers are. Whereas in D.C., in the federal courts in D.C., the federal government only typically gets about a 60% conviction rate. And most of these people who are being convicted, most of these people who are taking plea deals to avoid the trials and the cost of trials and the devastating, crushing blow that this can be to families and their finances and all the above, they are racking up this incredible conviction rate. But most of these people innocently arrived at the Capitol long after the barricades were breached, long after the doors were opened. They didn't see what happened, but there were between 3,000 and 3,500 people that wandered through those open doors, that they didn't kick those doors open. They didn't break those windows. They didn't even see when it happened. They just said, "Hey, look, honey, everybody's going in the Capitol. Hey, let's go see what it looks like. We've never been in there before." They walk through 10, 15, 30 minutes, take some selfies in the rotunda and statuary hall, in the crypt, take some, selfies with some statues of whatever their favorite president was. And their lives were destroyed for that.
Yeah, my a doctor that I go to, his wife never been to a political rally, decided to go to this one, never been to DC. She gets there, she was not on the front, she was in a different part, but she goes down there. They walk her in, there's like velvet ropes and a red carpet. She thinks she's on a tour.
Right.
They take pictures, there's video of the whole thing. Same thing, her life completely ruined. She's in her 70s. Zero hostility, zero damage, no violence. Completely has her life ruined. Loses her job. They had to hide her until their attorneys could work it out with the FBI. They bring her in. She does a little bit of jail time. And they have all the video that she did absolutely nothing wrong. It's so disgusting to me that they are going to such great lengths. You would think that people in the law would want the truth to prevail, but they want the narrative or the thing that's going to further their career. That's what they want to prevail. That's what I feel like is happening with you. Your higher profile. If they can nail you, somehow it looks good on their resume.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what it is. Now, I have the other problem of having been poking them in the eye for the last 3 years as well, because I have been doing actual investigations, not only into all of the events surrounding January 6th, but have also been doing investigations into the malfeasance of the police departments. I have been doing very deep investigations into the source and root cause of how January 6th happened, and they know that. They know what I'm working on. How do I know that they know? Well, because first of all, I have sources, and then secondly, because now I am a charged defendant. I am seeing the discovery, and I know what they're looking at. I know that they follow me. I know that they log my presence at various locations, and I also know that they are tracking my articles, even the ones behind the paywall on my blog, my personal blog. They actually have a CHS, a confidential human source, assigned to follow my blog. How do I know that? It's in the FBI documents that the government is having to turn over to me to look at. So they're watching what I'm doing. They're watching everything that I say, and so they've known for a very long time what I'm working on. And some of those things we've already been very successful in proving that malfeasance from some rather important figures related to January 6th, as well as trial perjuries, perjury before the January 6th Congressional Committee. And then we believe that we're going to be able to show it here very soon, that these perjuries were suborned by the Department of Justice itself. And then we're turning our attention ever more closely to the source and root cause of January 6th.
Okay, wow. Well, it sounds like Glenn Beck is on your side. You haven't been fired. You guys have gone deeper down the rabbit hole. That's kind of a Glenn Beck way of sticking it to the government, is to actually go deeper and expose more, even when they threaten him. Let's switch gears just in the remaining time that we have together. And again, I hope everything works in your favor, Steve. We had the presidential debate. Left-leaning media has been saying the president is the strongest he's ever been, one of the sharpest presidents we've ever had, just absolutely brilliant, commands a room, and anything that's caught on camera that doesn't follow that narrative is made up by Republicans, or it's artificial intelligence. And now we have this very, very national, global public debate, and Joe Biden's dementia and mental deficiencies are on full display, right in the limelight. What were your thoughts on the whole situation and the cover-up of his mental fitness?
Well, first of all, if you did not know what his mental state was before that particular debate last week, you had to be isolated in a media bubble that prevented you from seeing that. And that, of course, means you're only listening to those who then tell you, when you accidentally see something online, when you see one of these video clips of him spacing out, or him not being able to find his way off of a stage, him falling down, him mumbling completely incoherently for several seconds, not able to finish a sentence. If you believed that those were deep fakes or cheap fakes, as his press secretary says, then you had to be shocked at what you saw in that debate, because that was live. That was not an AI production. And as it turned out, tens of millions of people were in fact shocked to realize and to learn what we have known for years that was going on in the deteriorating mental capacities of our president. And so now we're looking at what is essentially a cover-up. It's not almost, it's Orwellian. They're now telling us that we did not see what we saw with our own eyes, that what we saw was an old guy with a cold on an off night, and that he's more than capable of seeing this thing through to November and beyond into his second term. The great part about this, and the amazing part, is that there are many on the left side of the ledger now, the political aisle, don't agree with that. They recognize it. They were themselves in denial, at least publicly, but this went over the top even for them, all the way up to the editorial board of the New York Times, which have called for him to step down. When the New York Times calls for you to step down, when they call for a Democrat president to step down, it's a serious situation. And it is, at this point, look, everybody's speculating, and I'm not going to do it. Are they going to pull the 25th Amendment on him, get him to step out? Is Kamala going to be our president up, for the remainder of the term through January? Is she going to be at the top of the ticket? Is there going to be a contested convention in Chicago in August? Yes, there is, by the way. I won't speculate about a lot of things, but I'll go on the record there. And it's more, for me, a time as a political junkie just to sit back and be amused by this. We've never lived in times like this. The first president I ever voted for was Ronald Reagan. So that gives you a little bit of an idea how old I am. And of course, I saw 2 decades of presidents before that I grew up with. And there's never been a time like this, Stephen. This is the most strange and odd political season of my lifetime.
Yeah, it is wild. I don't know if you saw this, but so now it's not the Republicans that are trying to embarrass Biden and do these cheap fakes. They're now saying that CNN used artificial intelligence software to make Biden look more pale and sickly and Trump to look brighter and happier. Like they're literally, there's people saying this. I'm like, oh my gosh, like you are desperately trying to wrap your brain around how the media lied to you about this man's mental fitness for years.
I'll give you the most absurd one I've heard so far.
Okay.
We now have the allegation that somebody was using a directed energy weapon against Biden on stage that night, causing him to be confused, causing him to be paralyzed with his eyes open and his mouth open, and that it was the Havana syndrome type weapon that was being used and directed at him on stage that night.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Probably Putin.
Yeah, well,
instructed by Trump to do it, you know?
Of course. That is, in fact, the implication.
Well, what are your thoughts on the 51 intelligence agents that knowingly lied, collectively came together under the direction of Antony Blinken to fabricate this letter that Hunter Biden's laptop was a Russian plant, Russian disinformation in order to allow the CIA to install Joe Biden as president? What are your thoughts? Should they have their security clearance ripped away? What are your thoughts?
Well, if they are in fact, and all were in fact former at the time, I've not looked at the names of all 51 recently, but if they were former at the time of this letter, and there is a means by which they can be prosecuted for election interference, that's exactly what they need to be prosecuted for, because they knew. Every one of them knew that they were lying. Every one of them knew that there was no such proof. Every one of them were actively participating in a disinformation campaign to interfere with an election. That's exactly what they were doing, and they knew it, to the extent that many of these guys from the intelligence community do retain their security clearances for basically life after their retirement, and the reason they do is they continue to work for contractors. They continue to sit on boards of defense companies and private security and analysis and private investigation, private. There are private companies that do what the CIA does. They spy, they do intelligence analysis, things of that nature. So these guys all have their second career. They should all lose their security clearances for this at the very least. And and of course, it was a much more coordinated campaign than even that, as we know, because we knew that both the FBI and CIA and other elements of our intelligence community were actively promoting disinformation, misinformation, and the deplatforming of voices, Facebook and Twitter, and all over the internet. And they were scrubbing Google, having them scrub search engines, and all of the things that were being done by the intelligence community at the time basically has set us, and when I say us, I'm not the only one, but there are many of us who are in the process of investigating this at yet another layer. And we believe that the same exact forces were involved in the ultimate setup of what took place on January 6th.
Yeah. I had one of your colleagues, Sarah Gonzalez, on not long ago, another Blaze media person. And she was talking about some of the different stories they're working on with this border invasion, dispelling the myths around Hunter Biden. What are some of the big stories that you and your team are working on that maybe my audience doesn't know about?
Yeah, the first thing that the audience ought to go look, the Blaze actually gave me my own unique URL at the Blaze. It's theblaze.com/truth. And all of my stories about January 6th are at that URL, theblaze.com/truth. But you can also go see the video versions of my investigative reports on YouTube. And believe it or not, they are there. They have not been taken down. They have not been, well, they may be being throttled in terms of distribution and your ability to find them, but they are still there. And so if you go to Blaze TV, on there, you'll see a separate a channel that's called The Truth About January 6th. And all of my videos are on there. And that's where you will see the stories about these police officers who we caught in perjuries. And we've got more coming. I have one coming out in a couple of weeks. It's going to be the story of the it's going to we're calling it a day in the life of Harry Dunn. He's the famous Capitol police officer who his initiation into the national spotlight was he claimed that he had been chanted at inside the Capitol by upwards of 50 people, that they had chanted the N-word at him. Of course, that never happened, and we can prove that on the video. But also, he testified in trials. He testified before the House Select Committee, and he perjured himself in both of those forums. And we can prove, and he was also given a book deal. He's actually now out on the campaign trail for Biden. And so we have been able to show that basically everything that he wrote in his book and everything that he said in these trials is a complete fabrication. And we've got that mini documentary coming out here in a couple of weeks.
Wow. 50 people standing around chanting the N-word. Sounds like a fake hate crime. Maybe he should hire Jesse Smollett.
Yeah, well, no, it is on par with that. It's not only as unlikely to have happened as it sounds, but this is the most video recorded event in the history of mankind. There's thousands of cameras and hundreds and dozens walking around you at all times in the Capitol. And then there's the Capitol CCTV as well. And then there's the Metropolitan Police body cams that were all over the building as well. And so we know that thing that he claimed that brought him to fame never happened. And then he started building on that and telling more and more and more fabrications.
Wow. Well, the truth wants to come out. We just got to give it a way to get there. You're doing it. I'm doing my best to do it as well. Steve, thank you so much for coming on. Where can I point traffic towards if they want to follow you online?
Yeah, all across the internet, I have one single handle, and that's at TPC 4 USA. TPC, the number 4 USA. So that's on X, that's on Facebook. My own personal blog is on Locals, and you don't need to type in anything other than just tpc4usa.com. It'll take you straight to my Locals blog. And so that's pretty simple. And then, of course, obviously at the Blaze as well.
blazetv.com/truth. Was that it?
Yeah, it's theblaze.com/truth. That's where my written articles are. And then all of our videos are on YouTube at just look up Blaze TV. And then you'll see under their playlists, you'll see one that says The Truth About January 6th. And that's
under the playlist. Okay. I will find that for my people to make it easy, and I will put a direct link. Thank you so much for coming on. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and best of luck beating the government in these stupid trials.
Hey, thank you, Stephen. I really appreciate it.